Wes, it's good to be. Oh man, I'm getting recorded. I don't know if I want to record this. No, I'm just messing around. Wes, it's good to be in a building, man, with my folks. Um, this month, Carlos wanted us to have some positive church experiences. Talk about positive church experiences. And I believe the reason why, Loso was like, man, let's do some positive church experiences. Because oftentimes, as we talk about like real life and we talk about a lot of real stuff here on this call, it seems like there's a lot of negative. And it's not so much that it's negative, but because we're vulnerable and authentic on this call, there's a lot of heavy things that we talk about. And so a lot of our calls have a lot of heavy energy. And so Los is like, man, I want to do some positive church experiences because we don't hear enough of, our positive church experiences. So he asked me to do positive church experiences as a leader. So I kind of flipped it a little bit. So I'm gonna have, a small lesson or a small discussion, as far as where I would like this call to go. But really, I'm going to put it back on you guys because, when I was at the preachers conference a couple of weeks ago, I learned a lot from these ministers, man, as to what they go through that we just don't know about. So, my topic, my scripture, I should say, is coming from 1 Timothy 5. It's the same scripture I put in the group. 1 Timothy 5, 17 through 18. 1 Timothy 5, 17 through 18. And I'm just going to read through the scripture, and then we're going to talk about, I'm going to let you behind the doors of preachers talking to preachers. And then we're going to, we're going to talk about what we can do to bless them. I want us to end this call by figuring out ways to bless the ministers and leaders and people who sow into our lives. So collectively, we can talk about how we're going to do that. But the scripture we're going to read is, again, 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 17 and 18. And the Bible reads, the elders who rule well are to be considered worthy of a double honor, especially those who work hard at preaching and teaching. For the scripture says, you shall not muzzle the ox while he is threshing, and the laborer is worthy of his wages. All right, so, not many things are discussed, and I don't think preachers really like to talk about, honor me, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do. And I understand that. I know that a lot of churches have homecomings, or they'll have a preacher appreciation. That's once a year, where, people come, they give gifts, they say things well of the preacher, how the preacher has blessed them, so on and so forth. But let me tell you some real stuff. We've been in a whole pandemic a year and a half, and these men of God have been expected to get up, preach in front of a camera, either from home or at their congregation. It's them, it's no one in the building. I know this because I've done it. That is very difficult. Week in and week out, they didn't have a week where they could say, I can't do it. They didn't have a week when they could say, you know what, this week we're not going to have church. They didn't have a week where they could say, you know what, I can't do a funeral, right? Even though, they couldn't come to the building, they still had to do funerals during this pandemic. And so they were dealing with a lot of stressors, right? And they still had to get up and put on this face and make sure that the building was being paid, that the church members who were complaining about the bad feed, why the churches don't have a good YouTube channel, why the church don't have good camera, why the church don't have good this, why the church don't have, they got to hear all that, and they still got to get up and encourage us week in and week out when we feel like life is going to hell, when Black men and women are being killed in these streets by the police and by each other. And they still got to get up and they got to put on that face, and they got to give you a word, and they got to study, and they got to take care of their wife, and they got to take care of their kids. And most times, y'all be talking about them pastors' kids, you're like, oh, the preacher's kids, they the wildest ones. The reason why they the wildest ones is because these ministers have sown so much into the ministry that they've neglected their own children to take care of your kids, because you don't know what to do with your kids. So they got to spend time with your kids and spend time with you and spend time with your mama, and then come home and then, got to be the greatest husband in the world Then he got to be the greatest dad, and he doesn't have that energy because it takes a lot. I don't know if you understand how much it takes. If you really are in this ministerial game, like really ministering to people, it's a lot, man. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. If someone calls you at 3 a.m. and says, my son just got shot, you cannot not answer the call, say, I was asleep, or I'm not available. You can't do that. The church people expect you. They don't see your paycheck is only $200. They don't see, they see all the nice food that you and your wife eat, but they don't see the struggles. They don't see the financial woes. They don't see the reason why your wife has to work. It's because, the ministry doesn't really pay that much. They don't see the fact that the reason why the ministry is going around the whole nation, preaching at all these other different places so they can have some spare change. Man, it ain't easy to be a minister, but what's easy to do is sit back and say what the minister's not doing. Ministers don't even know how to have self-care. We don't know how to say, I'm just gonna take a weekend, I'm gonna take a day, I'm gonna take a moment, I'm just gonna get away. We have anxiety when we do that, man. When we shut it down, I shut it down for 3 days and I was going crazy, felt like I had to do something. Why? Because we're trained, mentally conditioned that people need us. And we want to be there for people when they need us. And we don't look at it as 24 hours, 7 days a week, but it literally is 24 hours, 7 days a week that we're on call. And I'm not even a senior minister. And if I get half of what Faith gets, then I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm saying all this to say, I've been watching people, I'm gonna say it. I've been watching people not honor their minister. And I don't mean not honor their minister by not talking about them. I'm not talking about a pastoral appreciation or anything like that. And I'm not saying it's the boast. That's why I'm this recording is kind of messing with me, but don't stop the recording. I give to Faith. I'll send Faith, go eat lunch. Go buy yourself a shirt. I just on GP because he sows into me every day or every week. He's sowing into me. So it's just natural. If he's sick, I'll send food to his house. And it's not something I get on Facebook and take, and I'm not doing that so that you get, but that's what I do. And I thought everybody did that. But when I was at that pastoral preachers thing a couple of weeks ago, it was like, wow, these men of God were we get up every week, we preach, we do Wednesday night studies, we have to learn how to do things from a Zoom. We're worried about this building, we're worried about our own mortgage, we're worried about this, we're worried about that. So we got to take care of, we got to do funerals, we got to do this, we got to do that. People are still getting killed. People are still having problems in their marriages. The divorce rate during the pandemic and the abuse rate during the pandemic, the preachers had to deal with that because us, we're not going to the police and we're not going to a therapist. So we go where? We go to the preacher. And so the preacher has to deal with all this stress. And, he said, how many of you guys got a thank you during this whole pandemic? Just someone who called you out the blue and said, thank you. Thank you. Let me send you $20 so you can go to lunch. Thank you. They were like, nope, nobody. Nope, nobody did that for me. No one did that. Right. And, I'm in the middle of this and I'm like, well, I know what I do for Faith, but at the same time, I was like, well, I do a lot of stuff for people. And, I guess because we're real transparent on this call, I feel the graciousness from you guys. But as far as members and stuff like that, there were a couple of people who, man, I just want to tell you I appreciate you. But I was like, man, in the whole pandemic, as much as I was doing, 2 out of 150 it's not a lot. It's not, yes, that's just not a lot. And you don't get up there and preach a sermon for 2 people. You get up there and preach a sermon for however, you don't get up there and say, oh, only these 2 people called me and checked on me. So, now these are the only 2 people whose ask calls I'm going to answer. You don't do that. You're still available to every single person. And they weren't saying it to complain. They were saying it because as humans, as human beings, People don't look at ministers as human beings, that like we're real men. We hurt, we cry, having to do funeral after funeral, having to work out somebody else's marriage while my marriage is struggling, while trying to help somebody else's kids, while I'm trying to get my kids back in church. This is difficult. This is not easy. It's wearing. And the person who gets it the most, I get it, but then I don't display it displace it onto my wife. And so now we're beefing, but we can't tell the church that we beefing because no, not the man and woman of God. No, not the minister and his wife, not the pastor and the first lady. No, they're not having troubles. And we having troubles because of y'all. We having troubles because we're so busy trying to make sure y'all okay that we're not taking care of each other. And so these brothers, these ministers, these men, they've been called to the ministry. Yeah, they have a God ordinance on their life to do ministry and to do whatever it takes in order to make sure that the ministry goes forth. But oftentimes, the reason why, and I'm just going to be as transparent as I can be, the reason why we see a minister fall, and he fall because of adultery, or drugs, or he just leaves the ministry. This happens far too often, and we wonder why. We're like, why is this happening? Like, they should be the closest to God. When it's treated like a job, I study my word because I'm supposed to study my word to preach a sermon. So it's a job. And people think that, just because, you study your word, you should be close to God. The devil knows the word. A lot of scholars who don't believe in God know the word. So me studying my word to preach a sermon doesn't get me closer to God. It puts me on the forefront of the radar of the devil. But how many of us call a pastor, or preacher, minister, and say, "Hey, can I pray for you?" I'm just trying to. I really don't have a lesson. What I have is, I want us to hear the voice of preachers across America who are saying that we love you and we're going to preach a sermon, but that don't mean we're perfect, and that don't mean that we're not men. That don't mean that we don't have trouble. That don't mean we don't need prayer. That don't mean we don't need you to send us an extra $20 every now and again just so that we can go and take our wife out to lunch and say, "Hey, pastor, go ahead and go take your wife out on me this week, because you don't know what my finances look like, because wow, I can't tell you that I'm broke. I can't tell you that I'm tired. I can't tell you, there are no excuses, right? There aren't no excuses for me at 24/7. I'm the minister, 24/7, 24/7. There is no break. One last thing I'm gonna say on this, and then we're gonna talk about some things that we can do to rectify, to help ministers from our standpoint, from coast to coast, from being coast to coast, what we can do to be better about the ministers and the men, and not just the men, but the men and the women that we serve under, or that we serve. Some of you guys have ministers who don't even go to church, meaning people who sow into your life and minister to you and serve you under the umbrella of Christ, that you can help benefit their lives. So the last thing I want to say, as I talk about just the transparency of being a man of God, as a man of God, right, is really, in the churches of Christ, we don't have people who take sabbaticals, right? Vince is on here. Vince takes 1 month where he doesn't preach, but he's not really off. I want Vince to take a sabbatical, right? And I tell Faith to take a sabbatical. What's a sabbatical? To me, it's at least 3 months away from ministry, from work, from people calling, from doing funerals, and going and getting refreshed, to reset, getting rest to reset, taking time out with your boo, going to Hawaii, and not losing your funds from the church, and the church people not leaving because the senior ministers not there to preach those bomb sermons, that they understand and they undergird the ministry even more, and that they send the minister on his way to Hawaii or the Turks and Caicos or wherever they want to go. They send them and they give him a love offering, right? But you know what's hard for us in the Church of Christ to fathom that, to fathom the idea of taking a break, to fathom the idea of having the Sabbath, is because ministers are afraid of what I just said. Ministers are afraid that people will abandon the ministry if they leave for too long, that people will abandon the work of the Lord because they have put more stake into the man of God than they have put into the work of the Lord. And so, we don't get up there on Sundays trying to make you guys see us. We want you guys to see Jesus, and we want you guys to see the bride of Christ, which is the church, and you guys to work that. But if we fall, or if we cut you off, or we hurt your feelings, you guys, look, we're afraid you guys will leave the entire church if the minister don't heed to your beck and call, or so we're afraid to take rest and relaxation because we're afraid that you guys have put us on the throne of Christ and really haven't put Christ on the throne at all. And we can't tell you guys that, though. We can't tell you guys that because it's going to hurt your feelings, because you have put the man of God on his throne. So when he does fall, which he probably is falling in the dark, right? He probably is dealing with some stuff that you guys won't know about. He can't tell you, and you can't pray for him because, he's supposed to be Christ himself. Like, look, men of God are men, 100% human of God. Just like David was a man after God's own heart. Just like Moses was a man of God. Just like Peter was a man of God. All of these men had issues. All of these men were men. All of these men had to rely on God, but they also had to rely on the people of God to undergird them. I'm gonna leave with this because this thought has just come to my head. Moses, when they were in the wilderness, Moses was trying to lead these hundreds of thousands, and some say millions of Israelites in the wilderness. And his father-in-law had to pull him aside and say, check this out. You can't do it all. You need to set up 80 elders to help you manage the people, because it's a tendency for us as men of God to try to handle it all. And, we don't trust people. We love our elders, but, it's like our elders aren't us. So, so it's difficult for us to give it away, right? It's difficult, but his father-in-law is like, if you don't, you're going to kill yourself. Do you guys know how many ministers have committed suicide since COVID? How many ministers, and I'm not talking about just Church of Christ, I'm talking about in general. How many ministers have walked away from ministry? How many ministers have ended up in divorce, and not necessarily because they've committed adultery, but because they never knew how to treat their bride, because they were so busy treating the bride of Christ, the church, a certain way. They were spending more time at the church than they were spending their time at home. And so, what can we do? Now that we know all this stuff, right? We know all the stuff now. Right now, we don't think about it, so we know it. So y'all know, y'all didn't heard it now. Y'all done heard it from the horse's mouth. I gave y'all some stuff that was behind closed doors, like, ministers are men, ministers are hurt, ministers need to hear, thank you. Ministers need to hear, I love you, I appreciate you. Like ministers need to hear that, these hours and hours that we put in these 45-minute sermons are worth it, because we have these other things that we're neglecting to make sure you're okay. Like, so we need you every now and again to tell us, what I'm saying, hey, you're all right by me. So what I want to do now is I want to take this time to encourage us. I do want to do some breakout rooms, and I want you to go into these breakout rooms. Jonathan, can you do that for me? Some breakout rooms, and in these breakout rooms, I want you guys to discuss different ways that you plan on, or that you can and that you plan on, letting your minister or his wife or somebody at the church who serves quietly behind the scenes, and you see them, and they don't get the appreciation, they don't get the accolades, they don't get the applause, they don't get the thank yous. What are you going to do? What can you do to, to show them that you love them, that you appreciate them, to say thank you? What can you do? I again, I randomly send fake money. I randomly say, man, go eat. I tell them, hey man, you need to take a break. So those are a couple things that I do, and Faith is not the only one. There's other brothers throughout the brotherhood that I just randomly bless, because I personally, I know, from my viewpoint, I know what it takes to, to neglect and to give and to sow into and to not feel appreciated. So so we're going to go into these breakout rooms. Jonathan's going to go ahead and direct us to these breakout rooms. And in your breakout rooms, I want you guys to discuss ways that you can and you plan on, doing something for the men, women in your lives who have blessed you. It can be your minister, it can be his wife, it can be somebody in the community who blesses people and just does it effortlessly and tirelessly and doesn't look for accolades or anything like that. Because none of these ministers said, I want that. That's what I'm looking for. But they all need it. Now, one of them complained that they don't get it. And it's like, man, but I need that. Like a parishioner just saying, hey, how you doing? I love you. How can I pray for you? So so we're going to go into these breakout rooms. And then after we come from these breakout rooms, I'm going to have maybe every representative, or one representative, depending upon our time, to come and say what you guys have come up with as ways that you're going to bless the people of God in your life that God has allowed to sow into your life. So Jonathan, if you can go ahead and then break us up into rooms, I greatly appreciate it.